everybody. This is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that is going to change how we have conversations with our loved ones about the aging journey and their life decisions. Today, we are welcoming and talking with Jami Shapiro. She is a senior move manager and owner of Silver Linings Transition Team in San Diego, California. And she is the creator and host of the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. Jami is known for her authenticity and passion as she shares her journey of navigating the joys and challenges of life with ADHD. She is a level 2 specialist with ICD, which is the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, and is training to be an ADHD life coach through ADCA. And so she's going to offer insight, humor, and encouragement to all of us who may or may not be the person managing the neurodiversity, but also this is going to be for anyone at any age. So Jami, welcome so much. I know we're going to get real quick, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me, and I'm going to apologize in advance that my dog had a month with his father at home, so every time he had to go to the bathroom, he was walked versus what I have to do working from home, which is letting him out, and so I'm hoping that he's going to cooperate, and I just wanted to address the dog in the room versus the elephant.
And the dog's name is
Benji. This is Benji.
Welcome, Benji.
So I apologize. And what a great introduction. And I really like the theme of your podcast. I think that the information that you're sharing is really critical, because in our society, we want to bury our heads in the sand and pretend that aging isn't going to happen. And then what happens is it smacks you in the face, right? Crisis, as I say, doesn't make an appointment. And so being proactive and addressing it head on is going to lead to more successful outcomes.
I agree 100%. And that is why I'm here. I just feel like we stop having conversations at a certain point when they're uncomfortable. And that's when we need them most. And
Absolutely.
So that's my platform, is let's get everybody talking. So
I love it.
as far as you, how did you end up in senior move management?
So that's a great question. I actually was working as a realtor. I was a realtor in Florida for more than 10 years. And when I was, so 20 years ago, I was 34. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I found a lump in my neck. And I had to go through a cancer journey, and I was very thankful that it ended up being a very treatable cancer. And here I am 20 years later and cancer free. But when you go through,
Congratulations to that.
thank you. Yeah. It's really the origin story of how I came to name my company Silver Linings Transitions. I looked at my life, and that's one of the things that also helps me to have authentic conversations with seniors. And when I speak with them is, I am going to get real with you. A lot of times we don't even use the word death, and we need to talk about aging and, end of life and all of the decisions that get made as we are, adulting from one stage of our life to the next. So I was a realtor. I moved to San Diego and was going to not work. So I realized I wasn't doing what I really felt like I was called to do, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So when we moved to San Diego, I gave up my real estate business that I had built for, more than 10 years in my hometown. And I did a few other little jobs as I was a stay-at-home mom. But I discovered the senior move management industry. It's called NASM, NASMM. I think it's .org. And they were having their national conference in San Diego. And I went to the conference, and it was a light bulb moment for me. And I realized that senior move management even existed, because I had no idea about it. And actually, when my grandmother passed away unexpectedly 9 months after my grandfather died, my family was charged with clearing her home, dividing her belongings, and getting it on the market. And I wish that we had known back then that NASM even existed, because we really go into situations for seniors and then anybody who really needs our services. They now call it senior and specialty move management. And we go in and we just make the process of moving easier. Moving is one of life's biggest stressors. Circumstances, and then throw in, being a senior and the challenges that come with the physical limitations, and then the emotional toll of, typically when we're buying a house, we're buying a bigger house to accommodate a growing family. But as seniors, we're likely, going to a smaller, easier to maintain space, whether that's a community or living, near family, or just going to a smaller condo. So we're, one floor aging in place living. So anyway, knowing that NASM exists was really huge.
I think that's a big point to reiterate because I don't think a lot of people, they're probably stopping right now going, senior move management, didn't even know that was a thing. And so that's another thing is I want to just bring about these different industries, these specialties that are in the aging process journey that are available. And there are professionals to reach out to handle it at that level. So that's huge too. So for those of you listening, it's a thing, senior move management. Well, that's amazing. So I could see those two going together as far as, and you said this was then your heart calling. You went to the conference and they kind of showed you the way.
Right. So, I've built Silver Linings Transitions. We're in San Diego, and we are celebrating 10 years, although truthfully, it took me more than a year to get the business off the ground. So it really should be 11 years, but we're celebrating our 10th anniversary this. Thank you. And, I love seniors. I was really, really close with my grandparents, and I loved how my grandmother aged. She just had a really good sense of humor about it. So, and I was her only grandchild, and I could go down a rabbit hole talking about my grandmother. But, I think that there are people who have a special heart for seniors. And that is definitely the case of anybody that goes into, senior move management or, senior home coach is what you're doing. And, I'm part of that as well. Just, really like wanting to do more and help people who really deserve somebody that they can trust, that's going to be patient with them, that's going to guide them through a tough process.
Yeah. And what a beautiful thing to say about your grandmother that you just want, she aged beautifully. I mean, what a gift that is to give someone, and people don't even know that through their acts and their kindness and their grace, like what they are exhibiting for the
Mm-hmm.
next generation.
Mm-hmm.
That just gave me, the goosebumps. I just
Yeah.
love that she set that example for you and probably not even knowing.
Well, yeah, that was my experience of aging, was my grandparents. So, that's what I saw. Now, I won't say the same for my grandfather. He had a harder time with things, and they just had really different personalities, which actually sort of lays into the ADHD conversation.
Okay.
And I would love to share what brought me to your
Yeah.
podcast and what I'm trying to do with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I do think it all folds in. But man, when you say there's a podcast called Grandma Has ADHD, I mean, I don't think many people are going to forget that.
No, I
They
don't think.
are going to, and the curiosity behind that, I always say, my dad, we don't know. There were some kind of undiagnosed something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a learning, processing, something was
Mm-hmm.
going on, but we don't
Mm-hmm.
know. We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So, for that generation and, even my generation, our generation, we're of the same. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I sometimes look good and go, wow, am I? Because it wasn't around to be classified. It's just like allergies. There weren't blood tests to get allergies. It's the,
Well, we didn't. Right. We didn't recognize it in girls. So we recognized in our generation the hyperactive little boy who maybe had to be put on Ritalin to be in the classroom. And so that was what everybody thought was ADHD. It was a little boy who was on Ritalin who would outgrow it. And that was our generation. That's Gen Xers. That's how it was handled. Prior to that, they thought of ADHD as minimal brain dysfunction. And they didn't recognize inattentive ADHD. And girls and were not diagnosed at all. In fact, I personally did not receive a diagnosis until my oldest child was diagnosed, and I was 45 at that point. And I had a half brother with ADHD. And so when you would say ADHD, I would be like, well, that's that. I can sit still. So you have a whole generation of people who were not diagnosed, but especially women. And that is why I named it Grandma Has ADHD.
okay, well, there's a little bit of insight there. I love to know how things are named. I always
Sure.
think it's fascinating, stores, restaurants, everything. So
Mhm.
that's why it's grandma and not grandpa.
That is why it's Grandma. And also why I named my company Silver Linings Transitions was that had I not gotten cancer, I never would have really paused and looked at my life and thought, am I in the direction that I want to be on? Am I living my purpose? And so the silver lining of my cancer journey was that I was able to really evaluate my life. And that is one of the things that we focus on when we're working with our senior clients is, listen, this may be hard for you to be leaving the home that you've been in for 40 years or 50 years, but let's turn it around and look at, the silver lining or the bright spot. And that is that you've survived whatever life has thrown at you. You have the privilege of being a senior. Let's embrace everything you can. Let's squeeze every bit of juice out of this experience and just reframing, what aging looks like. Cause it isn't easy. It is not easy. And, I'm now turning 55 at the end of this month. And, I have to wear glasses to be able to see the screen to talk to you. And I have the aches and pains, but I'm lucky I'm here.
Yeah, and I do feel that I always say if we're vertical past 40, we've seen some things. We're, because there's people that are in that age bracket, but they're not vertical. They're not going around. They're kind of they've been overcome. And so I think if we're out, we're trying, like we've seen some things and we've gotten through them. And what a gift it is to, like you say, some people are not given that gift. They are not, and life stops abruptly for a lot of
Yes,
people.
sure.
So to have that opportunity, and that is something I'm huge about, is the future you. I've done a presentation at the senior center here locally that I need to do again because it went over pretty well. And I'm pivoting people and challenging people to think about at some point through grief, through loss, through how life maybe didn't turn out that we thought it would, we kind of stop planning and thinking about that future you because we have a hard time looking and going, this is future me. This is me. And you have to accept first. But then that's why I want these conversations. Like there's still more chapters. For you to say there's no more chapters is to just say I'm giving up. So the future you to me is like plan with grace, with the presence of mind now that you have. Share that vision with your loved ones. So what advice can you give on, so you've, love this, and I think that, I don't know if you do it anymore, but I had either heard or read that you have like a magical sense about things and that there are wands involved.
Yes,
Is this
yes.
true? So I have to say, this is maybe the fun fact of Lisa for the day. I am a huge Harry Potter nerd, geek, all the above. There's a little backpack over there that's a Harry Potter backpack, but I just love, and I just hang it on the door and look at it all day. So there's
Right.
something about that fantastical world that is that I love. Is this true? Can you go
Yes,
into how that
actually,
started?
I just received my trademark for making moves magical.
Oh,
Because when we go out and market, bring magic wands that light up, and we tell people that, and this is especially great for seniors, that again, I would say about 1 in 10 seniors even know that the senior move management industry exists, and there are a lot of people who really stay, I'm going to say, stuck in their home because, first of all, they don't know that there is an easy button or a magic wand, and also they are stuck in the stories behind their stuff, and it's very hard. And that's one of the things that we work on, is really helping them to focus on the future and preserve the memories, but it's not in the stuff. But so we do bring a magic wand and people remember the wand, and we just say, making moves magical, because we really do. We transform a stressful experience into one where they walk into their home and they are like, wow. Because what I tell people is we'll recreate those favorite spaces and we'll recreate the things in the curio cabinets, only we're going to dust them off and then we're going to put it back. So it really, it does feel magical, and people get to see their space where we've taken them from a big home into something small, keeping the things that are really important, the things that are familiar to them, the favorite pieces of furniture, the favorite items, but maybe pulling one from a collection and displaying it prominently. Keeping nightstands and doing what we can to maintain as much familiarity as we can, but also creating a space that, like I say, feels magical. And I love that you love Harry Potter. My
oh
oldest
my
chunk is
gosh, I'm
very
such
into
a
Harry Potter.
It's kind of scary. I mean, side note, people walk in and in the house, there's either the classical music, Harry Potter, soundtrack going on, or if it's on TV, I just pop it on at any point and it's just background sound. I know every word. Yeah, there's a thing
That's
there, but
actually an
I'm proud of it.
ADHD trait, by the way, to
Do
be
what?
that's an ADHD trait, by the way, to be hyper fixated or have a special interest in something. So my ADHD child was very interested in Harry Potter, read the books 35 times through, starting in first grade. Oh yeah. So now is not into Harry Potter, and that's a whole other conversation. But yes, so I my hyperfixation or my special interest is ADHD. So I jokingly say, you know, the little boy who can recite every dinosaur and when it lived and what its wingspan was and what it ate, and they just know everything about, they're like a walking encyclopedia of dinosaurs. That has become my ADHD super passion. So yours might be Harry Potter.
Yeah, yeah, that's there. And so I have like just a curious question of in all the moves that you do and the families that you help,
Hmm.
what differentiates or how do you approach somebody that is presenting as ADHD versus somebody that's not? Do you have like a different checklist that you even start with that, or do they start the same, but then they take different turns?
So that's a really, really good question. No one's asked me that. And I will tell you that I've known that I've had ADHD for about 9 years. So after starting the business, I discovered my own ADHD. I didn't recognize that our senior clients had it until about a year ago. Right. Because none of us, in fact, I've got a magazine right now on my desk, ADHD. It's all over the bookshelves, newsstands. You hear it all over TikTok. I've read all of these ADHD books. Nobody talks about ADHD in seniors. It is missing from the conversation. I didn't even think about it. And then I started to put the pieces together and realize that these disorganized clients or these clients that had a lot of clutter, sometimes it's hoarding disorder, and that's a very different conversation than ADHD. And I'll happily highlight the difference between those. So when it's a hoarding situation and there's a lot of stuff, we are going to cause them a great amount of stress. And by the way, I would say the majority of our clients are experiencing stress when they're bringing us in. So meeting them where they're at and reassuring them that what they're going through is normal and just holding their hands through the process is what we do for everybody. Just like there's universal design in construction and in building homes, there's really universal design in seniors because, people with ADHD will have cognitive impairment. I call it like a Swiss cheese memory, where I will forget a name or I'll forget something I just learned, but I can remember, something random. And that happens for, seniors generally who start to experience cognitive decline. So our team has been trained in working with ADHD because, like, for instance, prior to knowing that I had ADHD, if I hired an organizer to come into my home, they could get everything organized and it would look great, but I needed to have systems in place to maintain that and I didn't understand or realize. And so you're just going to go back to the problem unless you've addressed, this is why it's happening. And let's, 10 minutes a day, just tackle it. So what we also try to do is we get to know the client, we get to know their routines so that, if we know that they like to have coffee in a certain mug every day, we're going to make sure that that's all, categorized and organized and easy to find.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that, and I know you said just for our listeners to do the classification, because I know when you said hoarding, my face goes, oh, because it's a diagnosis. We
Right.
don't throw that word around in the industry. That's a serious word with a high level. So do you want to go into that definition
Yeah,
of
sure. Let me
being
tell you.
disorganized versus a true
Yes.
hoarding?
Let me tell you how I will distinguish hoarding disorder from, and I am not a medical professional. I am a level 2 specialist with ADHD. I'm sorry, with the ICD, Institute for Challenging Disorganization. But this is my experience of someone who has hoarding disorder versus ADHD. If you see somebody who has a lot of stuff, a lot of garbage, and a lot of things that you don't understand why they're holding on to, and you go into their home and you say, hey, I'm going to start, getting this organized and throwing things out, they're going to have a visceral reaction. They're going to feel sick. That is going to cause them a lot of distress versus somebody who has ADHD and they don't even know where to begin. There are piles everywhere. And I say, hey, I'm going to get you organized. Then they're usually like, yes, please. And you're not going to see the trash and the things that. So a hoarding disorder, from my understanding, tends to go more with an OCD, and an OCD, their mind sometimes will come up with things that don't make sense. And so sometimes that hoarding disorder, not always, can be attributed to, something that's going on. So they are holding on to objects that you and I would think are, why are you holding on to that? And what I've also found is that usually there's a triggering event that occurs in someone that develops hoarding disorder where that switch goes off. They maybe had a tendency towards a lot of stuff, and then they just start, hoarding in a way that is different than the typical collector or person with ADHD. And then there's also something called grief hoarding, which actually happened with my mother when my grandmother passed away. She wasn't ready to say goodbye to my grandmother, and she wasn't ready to go through her things. And so rather than us getting rid of a lot of it, my mom brought it into her home. And when I speak to audiences, I always tell them, think about your family and your legacy. What's going to happen when you pass, because you are going to pass, and the items that they're going to fight over. So let's make sure that we are letting people know exactly what we want, and let's not avoid that conversation, but let's be proactive and, this is how I want this to go. And then also keep in mind that if you are holding on to a lot of stuff and you're not addressing it, you may have a child that goes through a lot of distress when you pass away. So
Yeah.
be thinking of that as well.
So, that actually happened with our family. I've never heard it referred to as grief hoarding, but you just introduced me to something that I've experienced. So, my father, when he passed away, we sorted through probably 5 or 6 people's, his parents, his siblings that had passed, everyone. He had kept their things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an undertaking in the sense of, Medicare invoices from my aunt with Social Security numbers everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
going, oh my gosh, like this is such sensitive information. Even though she passed in the 90s, I don't feel right about putting her Social Security out there in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the level of their belongings. That is what he kept. He
Mm-hmm.
kept everybody's things, my mom's things, his sister's things, his parents' things. So when he passed, we didn't know. About a month or so before he passed, I found out he had 3 storage units.
Wow.
Yep. And a basement that we knew was quite full, even though organized in boxes, quite full, utility shelves, floor to ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
A basement in upstate New York that you can fill pretty well. It was a little bit of a maze in that. So getting going through the storage unit stuff, it's that moment of sadness where not only, and my father was alive still when we were going through the storage unit, but it was very, I'm sure it was hard to watch him and hard to do this activity of we need to get rid of 3 storage units and we don't even know whose things we're looking through.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even know who is in pictures that we're finding.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not know that. I didn't I mean, I try to understand from I try to take myself out of what I'm feeling and go, what caused this? Like, why did dad keep all these things? And there's a sadness in that, But so thank you for that because I did not know what grief hoarding was. And 100%, that is what he went through. That is how he grieved. And also you mentioned the organizing things and getting things together. When my mom passed, I went up and set up a system for him with bills and mail and stuff because it was a little overwhelming and it was not organized. And I was a little worried because my mom did all that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you say, with all good intentions, set up a system, but the system is only as good as somebody working it after you leave.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do not have that capacity to do so, like you say, it's with all good intention for families that maybe they, when they go home and they visit and they're seeing, the stacks of papers and the things, like at what point, what advice can you give to other adult kids out there that, a lot of us don't live near parents anymore
Mm-hmm.
and you have those maybe once or twice visits a year. Is there anything you can share on a proactive side of some things we kind of sign off as they're just getting older? And then,
Mm-hmm.
but is there something that we can be looking for that's like, okay, that's really something that I'm seeing that, that's an actionable item. We should kind of like follow up on that. Is there anything
Right.
like that through your years of training?
So I will tell you that I had this experience with my own mother where I was constantly going in and trying to get her organized and getting very frustrated. And one of the things that I know from, my years as working as a senior move manager is that parents of adult children, they are still the parent. They want to retain the role of parent. They don't want their adult child to come in and take that role away from them. And so it's really important that we approach those conversations in a way like I did with my mom. So I'm her only child. She lives in Florida. She knows what she went through when my grandmother passed away. I am now in California. So when my mother, who is I am her only parent, I'm her only child, sorry. When she passes, I am going to, while grieving, have to go through her things. Am not going to be able to bring everything with me. And she is leaving me with a daunting task. I'm going to feel guilt. I'm going to feel sadness. I'm not going to know what items are of value. So I actually asked my mother as a gift for me if she would do some Swedish death cleaning, which is basically proactively going through your home as if you have passed and leaving very clear direction for your children. And then, making note of what's important, what can be thrown away, and maybe taking care of what some of those things that can be thrown away. And we are living very differently now. And even like when my grandmother passed away, I was very, very close with her. My mother wanted me to take her china. And at that point, I had gotten married in 1999 and I had registered for my own china that I wasn't even using because we live very differently. So I didn't want my grandmother's china. That didn't mean I didn't love my grandmother. I adored her, but we live differently. So, people that are holding on to things thinking that their family members are going to want them, they need to have those conversations and really figure out what it is that they do want. And so I guess my advice would be to the senior would be to consider your adult children, consider the legacy you want to leave. Don't leave things up for grabs because I've seen it in my own family where families fought over these belongings and then stopped speaking. That happened with my aunt. And I wonder, how she would have felt if she had seen what happened to her 4 children. So make those things clear and maybe be creative about it. Like, I want you to trade wearing this ring every year rather than one person gets the ring, right? Like, let's really think creatively.
I
Um,
love
and
that.
then and then things can be taken one step at a time. That there's an expression, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So 10 minutes a day, I'm going to start working on this. Break it down into manageable pieces.
I love that. I love that. And that is something that, again, we're living longer. There's a lot of reasons for this that we need to be proactive and have these conversations while we have the cognitive ability so that we are sharing with the kids and the family on, what their wishes are. We need to
Mm-hmm.
vocalize that, have agency over it. This is
Mm-hmm.
what we are gifted with, with modern medical technology, all the things to live past a certain time that, gosh, keeps growing, growing, growing. But do it while you have the ability and while everybody's around. Like there's a group of people that say, bless your children while you're still here and let them
Absolutely.
know what that is. It doesn't have to be through a legal document that they find out sitting in an attorney's office after you pass. It's that beautiful part of life of the sharing of it and the stories of it and the why it means so much, I mean, if you receive something after someone passes and you have no idea what it meant to them or where it came from, like what a missed opportunity to share.
I
So that's
actually
another reason why I'm here.
Yeah, I actually did before when I still had all 3 of my children living at home. I did a family show and tell where it was Mother's Day, so I knew I had a captive audience, and I went through the bins of things that I had saved from my childhood, to share those stories and say, okay, does anybody want this? And at least then when they were making a choice, they knew what it was, but they also got to know a little bit about me and think back to, our days of show and tell in school and how fun that was. So I really encourage people to have those family show and tells.
Jamie, what a wonderful, I mean, this is just, I love these little nuggets you're giving. If there's a piece of jewelry that's important, like have people rotate it through and they get to wear it for a year or two. And then the show and tell of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because, there's those books now, and I think they're becoming more popular, the journals of, my
Mm-hmm.
father's life, my
Right.
mother's life. And it kind of prompts you to, what was your first job interview? And you write it and stuff, and it's here, it's left for whoever else after you. But I just think that the show and tell is just amazing idea because you hear things in your parents, and sometimes they don't tell those same stories anymore and you don't get those stories and you didn't know that, the strawberry shortcake doll and the rainbow bright and the things that, we grew up with, what it mattered or, I just think that's a beautiful thing, the show and tell. I might introduce that on a Father's Day here coming up that I think that's a fun thing. So that's just a golden nugget too. I really appreciate that. Is there anything else that I know one thing you say, as far as I love this line, attention deficit doesn't retire because you do. I think that's great because it's like, I think even on something I heard you on your podcast, that there was an international, uh, conference for ADHD.
International ADHD conference, yes.
Okay. And I think you said that at a certain point, the research only went up to like age 55 or something. Like after 55, they kind of put everybody together.
It was just a study that I had looked at, and they had
Okay.
just sort of they broke down ages, and then after 55, they weren't studying that. It was a specific study that they were talking about. But
Okay.
one of the things that's happening in the ADHD space is that they really haven't looked enough at what ADHD looks like in the aging population when they may not be able to take the medication that they rely on regularly. And then you're also throwing in some cognitive impairment.
Okay, Jamie. Well, just one other thing. The reason why I call this not ready yet is because I feel like everybody says that, but they don't know what the yet is. Because if they could answer what's making them say yet, then they could get information and make a decision that's good for them, right? Because it's all based off of what's right for each family and individual. What do you see how would you describe the not ready yet and what you do with senior move management or the ADHD side of things? How do you feel like that's affecting families?
So I would say that, none of us like uncertainty, and for a senior who's going into a next chapter, that's uncertain for them, especially if there's a move to a senior community. And then I'll reference back to how we all felt during COVID. None of us liked that space, right? But we have gotten through tough times, and I would say approaching what's next with curiosity and looking for the silver linings in that experience. Because again, we are lucky if we get to make those choices for ourselves, right? And the other thing is, if you don't make those choices, then sometimes, as I shared, crisis doesn't make an appointment. And those choices will be made for you. And so getting into the yet is that this is the reality that we are living in, and sometimes it just
That's what
needs
I
to
say
be.
is that normally if we don't make a decision by the time there's the seventh crisis or whatever the statistics say, then the decision that's being made is usually the one that you were fearing all
Yep.
along. And
And I will
so,
tell you,
yeah, like make that decision, have agency for yourself, be the narrator of your own story.
right. And what I hear pretty consistently from our clients once we move them in, because there is so much apprehension about how it's going to go, is I wish I had done this sooner,
Yeah.
and
Or I
and
wish I
that's
knew you sooner. Mm.
right. And I think that when people know and they hear that that's the experience for other people, it definitely helps. But to hear someone say, "Hey, I'm really nervous," like let's explore, why you're nervous. And I got the idea for the wand actually from a book. I think it's called Ninja Selling for Realtors. And it was, if I could, wave a magic wand and take away any of your concerns, what would those concerns be?
Yeah.
And so really let's explore those concerns. And then at least it's out there and we can talk about it and we can work through it.
Yeah. Give it a like verbalize that so that we can move through it. Because
Exactly.
if we move around it or try to dodge it, boy, it just comes back bigger and
Mhm.
stronger, and
Yep.
we have to move
Yep.
through it. Well, Jamie, I so appreciate all of your time today. Is there anything, of course, for those in California, how do they find you for your move
Sure.
management services? And then
Yeah.
everyone listening about the podcast, I just love listening to your podcast, Grandma Has ADHD. So how do we have listeners hearing this today find you?
Wonderful. Great question. So if you're in San Diego and you may need organizing or move management services, you'll find us at Silver Linings with an S, transitions with an S.com. And if you are somebody who isn't in San Diego and want to find a move manager, you can find them through NASM, NASMM.org. And then if you have ADHD or you suspect somebody in your family has ADHD, or you're a senior with ADHD, or you're just curious, you can listen and subscribe to Grandma Has ADHD. You can find it on our website. I think we're on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And then I am building a community on Facebook for seniors who need support, because one of the things that I know about the ADHD community is that we need a tribe. And so finding other people who understand you and can relate to you, and especially when people discover that all of these things that they didn't understand were ADHD, it's like they just got the playbook to their lives, and it's eye-opening.
And that's beautiful. And like I say, we're in the information world, right? Even though it wasn't something that maybe was diagnosed earlier in life, it's like, that's what we have. It is information, intellectual content. It's anytime. It's okay at any stage of life to claim something, say, I am this, own it. And I just think there's beauty in, if you didn't know and you have your own little tricks and hacks to life that got you where you are and you're successful, and that's wonderful. But there's also leaning into the support too, and having that community that you're establishing. So that's wonderful. Jami, I think the world of what you're doing, and I know this is something that I think is beautiful too, that you end with, or it's a saying that you have, so I'm giving you full credit on this. Embrace the saying of make the rest of your life the best of your life.
I do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just love that. And did that come about through just all the above that we've talked about? That just is how you summarize everything.
Somebody said to me, well, why does it matter if a senior has ADHD? And I'm like, well, if you could make your life better, why wouldn't you? Why do we negate being a senior? It's like they shouldn't have the best experience possible.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Well, exactly. So, Jami, thank you so much for your time today, and everything will also be in the show notes. So I thank everyone for listening through the end of this episode, and hope that this got you thinking. And if you like what you hear, please share this with others that need to know what we're doing in this movement, and that the life decisions that I'm gonna have to redo that because things are blowing up over here. Sorry.
That's okay.
I should have taken my phone off or my watch off. So I'll just end by saying thank you.
I've got a dog that's like totally.
Yeah. I think that I'll just end previously. I think I had said, about the show notes and stuff. I'll just cut it earlier.
Okay.
I was trying to say too much, which is normal.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna
Jami,
go grab.
Thank you.
Really good. You're a really good host. I was really impressed when I talked to you. You're, and I love your conversations. So
thank you. You're my fourth one.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't launched yet. Still gathering, but it's happening.
I know. I know. Right in that same space. I just launched in October. So
yeah.
All right.
Jami, thank you again. I will see you on another side.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.